Good evening. Sorry to have kept you so long. As most of you know from being down at the scene, we are in the very preliminary stages, so we've been working through some additional information. I am joined here this evening by Cambridge Police Commissioner Christine Elow, Lieutenant Donahue of the Mass State Police assigned to our office, our Chief of Homicide, Adrian Lynch, and Assistant District Attorneys Carrie Spiros, Caroline Evans, as well as Cambridge Police Superintendents Fred Cabral and Rob Lowe. I stress again that we are in the very preliminary stages of this investigation. We don't have an incredible amount of information, but we are able to provide you some details. What we know is that about 1:15 this afternoon, Cambridge Emergency Communications received a 911 call from a resident in Cambridgesport who had witnessed a man jump out of the window of a nearby apartment. He further reported that he believed that man to be in possession of what he described, the caller described, as a machete. The caller said that the man was now sitting in a courtyard of that development and appeared to be cutting himself with both the weapon, which was later identified as a kukri knife, and broken glass from the window through which he had come. Multiple paramedics and officers were dispatched. They responded, located the man, who was later identified as Sayed Faisal, age 20, of Cambridge, bleeding in an alley behind a building on Sidney Street. The investigation suggests that Mr. Faisal ran with that knife after having encountered the police, traveled through several blocks down in the Cambridgesport neighborhood, down by the tracks at Albany Street, essentially making a circle around the neighborhood, before he again encountered the officers on Chestnut Street. The officers engaged verbally with him, asking him to put down the knife. The man reportedly was moving towards the officers, still in possession of that knife. In an attempt to de-escalate the situation, one of the officers discharged a less than lethal sponge round. That round was unsuccessful in stopping Mr. Faisal. He continued to advance to the officers, holding the knife at one point across his body and then holding it raised out in front of him. A Cambridge officer discharged his department-issued firearm and struck Mr. Faisal. He was immediately rendered first aid on the scene until the emergency services responded. He transported to Mass General Hospital and later died of his injuries. We are again in the very early stages, but we are asking anyone in the neighborhood who may have information or may have video from this afternoon to be in contact with the Cambridge Police. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Elow.
Good evening. I just have a brief statement. First and foremost, our thoughts and condolences go out to the loved ones and families of Mr. Faisal. The District Attorney's Office will be conducting a complete and transparent investigation. The Cambridge Police Department will be cooperating 100% with that investigation. Anytime a life is lost in our community, it is tragic, so we are all mourning. Thank you.
We'll take any questions.
What exactly is a sponge round?
It is a round that's discharged from a cartridge, and the purpose is it goes at a fairly high velocity. The hope is that when it strikes someone, it will startle them and cause them to come to a halt.
Witnesses said they heard 4 to 5 shots. Can you say how many shots were discharged?
Not at this point, that's part of the investigation.
How many wounds did the victim receive?
We're still waiting for the report from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner.
And did you say it's believed that the 20-year-old man held a knife up against an officer at one point, or
No.
was waving it?
No, the information, the preliminary information we have is that at some point as he was running with the knife, at some point he was holding it across his own body, and at other points he was holding it out straight.
Is it believed that the man was having like a mental health episode?
Well, I think what we know is that this individual who was the caller told us that he saw the man come out a window of a neighboring building. He then saw him on the ground, and he saw him inflicting wounds on himself with both the knife and pieces of the glass that had come out of the window.
Did he appear to be a threat to anyone else around him or just himself?
Well, initially what we know is he was injuring himself. We then know there was a multiple block chase during which he was wielding this fairly intimidating knife.
Does he live in that apartment that he jumped out of?
We believe that to be the case, yes.
Would you be willing to release picture of the knife, the machete, the knife, whatever it's, the weapon he was wielding?
Not of that particular, the knife itself, but we can provide you with
An idea of.
that idea, yeah.
So it's not a machete, or you would?
How big would you say it was?
I would say it is probably end to end, a foot, probably about a foot, 10, 12
I mean,
inches.
should we not describe it as a machete then, because it's not quite, that's what it was, I mean, it wasn't.
It is actually, machete is what the caller reported it to be. Upon examination, it is actually the kukri knife.
Okay,
Okay, that's what it's called. A
okay,
Kukri.
you'll have to Google that.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you can Google it and you'll see that description. You'll see what it is.
Can you release the identity of the officer who shot and killed him?
We do not, at this point, do that.
Can you say like how many years on the force he has or anything like that?
My understanding is he has about 7, 8,
Placed on leave for now or no?
yes, according to contract in Cambridge, he is placed on leave.
Paid leave?
Yes.
Do you have a spelling on the man's name?
Yes. First name, Sayed. Last name, Faisal. 20 years old. Okay. Anything else, Dan?
Was he previously known to authorities before this incident?
He was not.
Do you have any comment just generally on the police response? Obviously with a situation where someone might be having a mental health episode, I know this is something you've discussed in the past, how to respond to these incidents.
We've talked about this a lot. I think Commissioner Elow will talk about the particular training that the Cambridge officers receive in responding to these situations.
Sure. Our officers have received extensive training in use of force, including ICAT training. This is all de-escalation training, trauma-informed police training, mental health first aid, crisis intervention training. So we have had extensive training in mental health and de-escalation training.
And how did that, was that training applicable today? Did that happen in your eyes?
From our perspective, from what we've gleaned so far, our officers tried several times to engage the individual verbally, unsuccessfully. This lasted over 5 blocks from where we first encountered them. So we tried several times to de-escalate the situation.
Do you know how many officers were present when shot or shots were fired?
I don't have that exact number right now.
You mentioned thoughts and prayers for the victim's family. Have you heard from his relatives?
Yes, we have an officer that is with the family, and we will be reaching out to the community that this individual is a part of.
How are they reacting to that?
It's difficult.
Do you have and I'm sorry if you said this earlier, but do you have an exact address of where the shooting happened? I don't know, relative to a nearby address, just so we have an idea.
It occurred on Chestnut Street.
On Chestnut.
Yeah. I will say that as the commissioner indicated, it was a several block chase. We know the incident, at least from the time we got the call until after the non-lethal rounds have been fired, was in excess of 12 minutes. So it was a fairly long chase and encountering that was going on in attempts to de-escalate.
And I'm sorry, did you say he was a student perhaps?
We have some information that he may have been a student, yes.
At MIT?
No, our information, and this is very preliminary information, is UMass Boston. Thank you all. Thank you for your patience.